If you want to build a new gaming PC without completely breaking the bank, then this is for you. What you're looking at here is a gaming PC that not only looks really clean, but it will allow you to play every single game with high settings, and to top it all off, this computer will last you for years to come because it is built on the newest AM5 platform, which will have support all the way until 2027. But if you know anything about AMD and how long they supported the previous AM4 platform, that socket launched in 2016, nearly a decade ago, and today in 2025, they are still going to release a new CPU. I think it's safe to say this thing will last, and it's a great future-proof gaming PC for anyone wanting to spend under $1,000. This video is sponsored by Okinos and the really clean Mirage 4, which is the case we built in today, but more on that later. I'll be going over all the parts that I used for this build, and of course, we will be checking out how this thing performs in some games. Starting off with our CPU, I would say it is one of the best options for starting out on the AM5 platform. It will do great at 1080p, and it can even handle stronger GPUs for some future 1440p gaming if you decide to upgrade down the line. I bought mine in a lot of 3 on eBay. My price came out to $135.93. I am talking about the AMD Ryzen 5 7600. It is a great starter option because it's built on the newer Zen 4 architecture. It has 6 cores with access to 32 megabytes of L3 cache, and that's the key for selecting a solid budget CPU. You can still buy this CPU brand new. However, I would recommend the secondhand market, and if you can't find one under $150, then I would recommend going brand new. You can get the Ryzen 5 7600 or even the 9600X. Both of these options are better and can be bought brand new for $170 to $200, depending if there are any sales going on. But if you're looking to spend a little less, you can look at the AMD Ryzen 5 8400F. Just keep in mind it will perform a little worse, but it still gets you on the AM5 platform for pretty cheap. For cooling, you can use a standard tower cooler, but I went with the Thermalright Frozen 240mm AIO. It's not completely necessary, but one, having an AIO looks really good in the Okinos Mirage 4, and 2, you'll see in the benchmarks later on that it helps with the temperatures, and it will allow you to upgrade the CPU without having to also worry about upgrading the cooler. For the motherboard, I'm using the Asus Prime B650MA AX2. It's a decent board with little VRM cooling, supports PCIe 5.0 devices, has your standard 4 RAM slots, 2 M.2 slots, and it also has plenty of fan and RGB headers. I paid $55 for this board on a great bulk deal when I bought 5 of them, but you can expect to pay around $100 to $150 for a brand new one on Amazon or Newegg. Bonus points if you shop secondhand and find a good deal. If you live near a Micro Center, I would recommend checking it out. Sometimes it can be worth it. They'll have open box deals on like motherboards, graphics cards, power supplies, processors, everything. And it's a good way to save some money. For the RAM, if you're building a new AM5 computer or even Intel based, I would recommend you get 32 gigabytes of RAM right off the bat. I wouldn't even consider 16 gigabytes in 2025, especially if you want to do more than gaming. Sure, you can get by with 16 gigabytes, but 32 will give you more flexibility in whatever capacity you go for. I would make sure to get one that runs at 6,000 megahertz, and you can expect to pay anywhere from $50 to $120. Again, that depends on sales and if you buy new or used. Moving on to storage, I recommend a capacity no smaller than 1 terabyte. I'm using one of the cheapest Gen 4 NVMe SSDs that I found on Amazon. It's a Clev Crass C910 and it was $59.11 after taxes. You can buy a PCIe 5.0 drive because the motherboard supports it, but this will do great for most people and it will save you a bit of money, but of course, you can buy whatever you want. Now finally, the case that's holding all of our components. This is the brand new Okinos Mirage 4. It's a micro ATX case which comes in white or black and with 3 ARGB fans. You've probably heard of Okinos from the popular Aqua 3 case that they released. Well, this is that, but I would say it's better. It still keeps a nice compact footprint on your desk, but you are no longer restricted to just air cooling. You can easily fit a 240mm AIO up top, and when I say easily, I mean it. I was able to install it with the motherboard already in the case and route the cables with no problem, and I even plugged in the CPU power last, and if you've built a PC before, you know how hard that can be, but with this case, there was a lot of room to work around. It supports a good amount of hardware, full-size ATX power supplies with a removable drive cage around back, and there is lots of room for cable management. A lot of little tie down points for zip ties for all the cables, and it also has 2 included Velcro straps to help tidy everything up. Aside from that, it comes with 3 ARGB fans, 2 of which are intake at the bottom to pull in nice fresh air for your GPU, and you can fit a card up to 325 millimeters in length. Another thing I like, it has an RGB controller to hook up extra RGB products, and they are all controlled via the button on the case, but you can hook it up to your motherboard software if you'd like. Thank you Okinos for sponsoring this video, and be sure to check out the Mirage 4 with the links below. Now for the GPU, I went with an option from Nvidia. It can take advantage of new frame gen technologies, which is almost like free performance. It is not the new RTX 5060, which can still be found in stock for MSRP, but I went with the previous generation, the RTX 4060 with 8 GB of VRAM. I paid $250 for this Asus dual white model, and I really wouldn't pay any more than that, because like I said, the new RTX 5060 is in stock for the MSRP of $299. Of course, that is at the time of recording this video. Who knows how long that stock will last. To power all these parts, you can get away with something a little more modest. I bought this all white Apivia Prestige 600 watt 80 plus gold unit. People will say this power supply is bad, and others will say it's a great budget option that won't blow up your parts. It cost me $59.80 after taxes, and I like the fact that it has all white cables, even the power cord, so I didn't have to spend more money and buy cable extensions. This unit would allow for at least 1 GPU and 1 CPU upgrade. People get caught in thinking they need a really good power supply for every PC, and that's not the case. Get something like this and you'll be chilling. The final price that I paid for this build is just under $700, and I must say, I am pretty impressed by that. But if you don't want to take the time to shop around and find deals, you just want mostly new parts, well, I found the max prices that I recommend you pay. The total is still under $1,000, and all the parts I used are linked below. And if you end up copying this build, there are a couple things I recommend you do before anything else. First, get into your motherboard's BIOS by spamming delete on your keyboard right after you turn it on, and you'll see a screen similar to this. Navigate to something that shows your RAM. It depends on your motherboard you go with, but you'll want to set it to enabled, and you can see it changes the speed to 6,000. Second thing you should do is update your BIOS and use the easy flash tool in your motherboard's BIOS and just follow the steps. There's further tweaking you can do, but those are 2 very basic things that I would suggest. In games, this thing performs pretty great. For a newer, slightly demanding title, I tested Marvel Rivals at 1080p with DLSS frame gen enabled, and I selected the Ultra settings preset. In my experience, I was averaging 111 FPS, and the 1% low was 37. I was also curious to check out the performance without frame gen, so for anyone else that might have been curious, without frame gen enabled, we averaged 79 FPS, and the 1% low was 46. Now for a game that always surprises me on how hard it is to run once you crank the settings up. I'm talking about Fortnite. This PC was low-key struggling with all high settings at 1080p. I ended up averaging only 77 FPS, and the 1% low was 40. It's more than playable with these settings, and the game looks great, but I wanted to test with more realistic settings. I changed everything to low, except I kept view distance at far and 100% 3D res scale. You could go further and enable performance mode, but I didn't bother. After changing the settings, we averaged 177 FPS with a 1% low of 104. But that wasn't the only difference. I also noticed the frame time was a lot better, which helps with the overall smoothness, and frame time is just the time between each frame. And another thing I noticed was the RAM usage. As I said, I recommend 32 GB of RAM, and you can see in Fortnite, it's using above 16, so there's that. In Call of Duty Black Ops 6, I tested it at 1080p with high settings, and I turned on DLSS frame gen, but I also tested without so we could see the difference. With DLSS frame gen, I was seeing a great average FPS of 126, and the 1% low was 58. Now if we turn off DLSS frame gen, to say the least, the numbers look worse. We averaged 88 FPS, but the 1% low was better at 64. For a couple story mode games like Cyberpunk 2077, I tested at 1080p with the Ultra settings preset. We averaged 94 FPS with a 1% low of 62. And in Red Dead Redemption 2 at 1080p with Ultra settings, we averaged 79 FPS and the 1% low was 63. What do you think of this computer and the performance that it dishes out? I still think it's a great future-proof gaming PC for under $1,000. Everything is linked below, and be sure to check out the Okinos Mirage 4 if you're looking to build a new PC. It's a solid little case. That's it for me. Smash a like if you enjoyed the video, subscribe if you want, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.